Hey there, I need to tell you about something that's been haunting me for months now. My name's Mia Taylor, I'm 28, and I live in this quiet little town called Willow Creek, tucked away in the misty hills of upstate New York. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, the fog rolls in thick every evening, and the old forests seem to whisper secrets if you listen close enough. But what I'm about to share isn't some campfire tale. It's real. It's what happened to me, and it started with my dog, Baxter. He's a scruffy golden retriever mix, about 5 years old, the kind of loyal companion who's been my shadow ever since I adopted him from the shelter after my messy breakup 3 years ago. Baxter's always been my rock, you know? But lately, he's been acting like he knows something's terribly wrong with the world around us, like reality itself is cracking at the seams. And the scariest part? I think he's right. It all began one foggy autumn night when I noticed him staring into the corner of the room. His ears perked up, a low growl rumbling in his throat at absolutely nothing. Or at least, nothing I could see. That moment hooked me in, made my skin crawl, because deep down, I felt it too, a subtle shift, like the air was thicker, the shadows a bit too alive. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning, that Baxter was trying to warn me about the glitches in our everyday life, the ones that make you question if you're losing your mind or if the universe is unraveling. Stick with me, I'll take you through it step by step, because once you hear this, you'll start watching your own dog a little closer. It was late September, the leaves just starting to turn that fiery orange and red, painting the hills like a slow-burning fire. I'd moved to Willow Creek 2 years prior, seeking solace after that breakup I mentioned. My ex, Mark, had left me feeling like a hollow shell, so I packed up my life from the bustling city and found this cozy cabin on the edge of town. It's an old place, built in the 1920s, with creaky wooden floors and windows that rattle in the wind. The nearest neighbors are a mile down the dirt road, and the forest presses right up against my backyard, dense and ancient, full of trails I love hiking with Baxter. He's my adventure buddy. We'd spend hours out there, him bounding ahead, sniffing out squirrels and forgotten paths. But that night, everything changed. I was in the living room, curled up on the couch with a mug of chamomile tea, trying to unwind after a long day at my job as a graphic designer, freelance work from home, mostly logos and websites for local businesses. The TV was on low, some mindless documentary about lost civilizations, but I wasn't really paying attention. Baxter was at my feet, dozing peacefully, or so I thought. Then, without warning, he bolted upright. His head snapped toward the far corner of the room, where the old bookshelf met the wall, shrouded in shadow from the single lamp I had on. His eyes locked on that spot, unblinking, and a soft whine escaped his lips before turning into that deep, guttural growl. I froze, tea halfway to my mouth. "Bax, what's up, boy?" I whispered, but he didn't even glance at me. His fur bristled along his spine, and he started backing away slowly, his tail tucked between his legs. The room felt colder suddenly, like a draft had slipped in, but all the windows were shut tight against the fog outside. I set my mug down and knelt beside him, stroking his head, trying to calm him. "It's nothing, buddy. Probably just a mouse in the walls." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. There was no sound, no movement, nothing to explain why he was so fixated. I stared at the corner too, half expecting to see something materialize, like a shape forming in the dim light. My heart picked up pace, a prickly unease crawling up my arms. After a few tense minutes, Baxter finally relaxed, shaking himself off and trotting back to his bed by the fireplace. I laughed it off nervously, chalking it up to his quirky senses, but sleep didn't come easy that night. I kept glancing at that corner from my bed upstairs, the darkness seeming deeper than usual. The next morning, I shook off the weirdness. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as I made coffee, and Baxter was his usual self, wagging his tail and begging for scraps of my toast. We headed out for our daily walk, following the trail that wound into the woods behind the cabin. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of fallen leaves and pine. Birds chirped overhead, and for a while, it felt normal, peaceful, even. But about halfway in, maybe a mile from home, Baxter froze again. This time, he was staring at a cluster of trees off the path, their trunks twisted like ancient guardians. No growl, just that intense, unwavering gaze. I tugged his leash gently. "Come on, Bax, let's keep going." He resisted at first, planting his paws, but eventually followed, though he kept looking back over his shoulder. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the crunch of leaves under my boots, but a nagging doubt crept in. What if he was sensing something I couldn't? Animals have sharper instincts, right? They feel earthquakes before they hit, smell danger in the wind, By the time we got back, I was unsettled enough to Google dogs staring at nothing, but the results were mundane: ghosts for the superstitious, or medical issues like seizures. I scheduled a vet appointment just in case, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that. That afternoon, while working on a client's brochure, I caught myself glancing at Baxter more often. He was napping in a sunbeam, but every so often, his ears would twitch, as if listening to a distant call. The day dragged on, and as evening fell, the fog returned, thicker than before, muffling the world outside. I decided to light a fire in the hearth to chase away the chill, and that's when the second incident happened. I was stacking logs when Baxter suddenly leaped up and bolted to the window, pressing his nose against the glass, barking furiously. Not his playful bark. This was urgent. Alarmed, I rushed over, peering out into the gray haze. The backyard was empty, just the vague outlines of trees swaying in the breeze. "What is it, boy? Deer? Raccoon?" I murmured, but he kept barking, his body rigid. Then, abruptly, he stopped, whimpered, and backed away, circling the room anxiously before settling down. My pulse was racing. I felt exposed, like something out there was watching us back. I drew the curtains tight, but the unease lingered, wrapping around me like the fog itself. Over the next few days, these episodes became more frequent. Baxter would fixate on random spots. The attic door one evening, growling softly as if something was scratching from the other side. The basement stairs the next morning, refusing to go down for his food bowl until I carried it up. I started noticing little things myself, subtle glitches that I might have dismissed before, like how the clock in the kitchen seemed to skip seconds sometimes, or the way reflections in the mirror felt off, just a hair's breadth delayed. At first, I thought it was my imagination, fueled by Baxter's behavior, but it built up, layer by layer. One night, I woke up to him standing at the foot of my bed, staring at the ceiling. No sound, just that piercing gaze. I sat up, whispering his name, and followed his eyes upward. The room was dark, but in the faint moonlight filtering through the blinds, I swear the shadows on the ceiling rippled, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. My breath caught. I blinked hard, and it was gone. Baxter whined and jumped onto the bed, burrowing close to me, his warmth a small comfort against the growing dread. I confided in my best friend, Sarah, over coffee at the local diner a week later. She's lived in Willow Creek her whole life, knows all the old legends about the woods, whispers of lost hikers, strange lights at night. "Dogs sense things we can't," she said casually, stirring her latte. "Maybe Baxter's picking up on some animal vibes or electromagnetic whatever from the old mines nearby." But her words didn't reassure me. If anything, they amplified the mystery. That same day, while walking Baxter along the river that cuts through town, he pulled me toward an overgrown path I'd never noticed before. It led to a clearing with a weathered stone marker, half buried in vines. As we approached, Baxter's hackles rose, and he let out a series of sharp barks, echoing unnaturally loud in the still air. I knelt to read the faded inscription. "Here lies the veil, thin as breath." Chills raced down my spine. What kind of marker was that? Historical? A prank? Baxter tugged me away, and I let him, the words lingering in my mind like a warning. As October deepened, the incidents escalated, weaving a web of tension that I couldn't escape. One evening, alone in the cabin with rain pattering against the roof, Baxter began pacing the hallway, stopping every few steps to stare at the walls. I'd turn on all the lights, but the shadows seemed to defy them, pooling in corners like ink. I'd feel a brush of cold air on my neck, as if someone, or something, had exhaled nearby. But when I'd spin around, nothing. Baxter would whine, pressing against my legs, his eyes pleading. It was like he was trying to protect me from an invisible threat, one that was seeping into our reality bit by bit. I started sleeping with the lights on, but even then, dreams plagued me, fragmented visions of the forest shifting, trees bending in impossible ways, and Baxter leading me deeper into the unknown. Then came the night that truly shook me. It was a full moon, the kind that bathes everything in silvery light, making the fog glow ethereal. I was reading in bed when Baxter suddenly leaped off and scratched at the bedroom door. Reluctantly, I followed him downstairs, where he led me to the back door, pawing insistently. Against my better judgment, I opened it, stepping out onto the porch with him. The air was unnaturally still, no cricket chirps, no rustling leaves. Baxter stared into the woods, his body tense. And then, in the distance, I heard it, a faint whisper, like voices murmuring just beyond hearing. My skin prickled. I strained to listen, but it faded as quickly as it came. Baxter growled low, and for a split second, the trees at the edge of the yard seemed to glitch, their outlines flickering like a bad TV signal. I gasped, rubbing my eyes. but when I looked again, they were solid. We hurried back inside, and I bolted the door, heart hammering. What was happening? Was the world breaking, or was I? The pattern continued, each day adding to the mosaic of unease. Baxter's stares grew longer, more insistent, directing me to spots where the air felt heavy, charged with an electric hum I could almost taste. I touched the walls there, feeling a subtle vibration, like the house was alive. Friends noticed my distraction. Sarah texted, asking if I was okay, but how could I explain without sounding crazy? Just stressed, I'd reply, but inside, the fear gnawed at me. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, Baxter refused to come up, barking from the bottom of the stairs. Up there, amid dusty relics from previous owners, I found a journal, yellowed pages filled with cramped handwriting. Flipping through, entries spoke of shifts in the veil, whispers from the other side, and a dog that knew before anyone. My hands trembled. Was this connected? I pocketed it, descending to Baxter's relieved whines. Nights blurred into a vigil of sorts. I'd watch Baxter as he watched the nothing, his instincts pulling at threads I couldn't see. The glitches multiplied, a cup on the counter sliding an inch on its own, lights flickering without cause, mirrors reflecting rooms that felt slightly askew. Each one sent a jolt through me, building the suspense like a storm gathering. Baxter became my anchor, his presence a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. But the unknown loomed larger, whispering promises of revelation, or ruin. What if reality was fraying, and Baxter was the only one attuned to it? The thought kept me up, staring into the dark, waiting for the next sign. As the weeks wore on, the forest called to us more insistently. Baxter would pull toward those woods during walks, leading me to hidden spots. A circle of stones where the ground felt soft, unnatural. A stream where the water flowed upstream for a heartbeat before correcting. Each discovery heightened the intrigue, a puzzle piecing together in shadows. I'd return home, journal in hand, poring over entries that mirrored my experiences, the previous owner's words echoing my fears. The dog sees the cracks, one page read. Follow him, but beware what lies beyond. One stormy evening, with thunder rumbling like distant warnings, Baxter's behavior peaked. He circled the living room, whining, then darted to the window, pawing the sill. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the yard, and for a frozen moment, I saw it, a silhouette in the trees, humanoid but wrong, proportions stretched. Blink, and it vanished. Baxter's barks filled the room, urgent. My breath shallow, I grabbed a flashlight, but hesitated. What if stepping out meant crossing into whatever lay hidden? The rain lashed the windows, and I pulled him close, whispering, "It's okay, boy. We'll figure this out." But doubt crept in. Was it? The accumulation of these moments wove a tapestry of terror, subtle yet relentless. Baxter's knowing eyes met mine often, as if urging me to believe. The world outside the cabin felt altered. The town of Willow Creek now laced with an undercurrent of wrongness. People went about their days, oblivious, but I saw it in the way shadows lingered too long, how conversations echoed faintly after ending. Sarah mentioned odd dreams over lunch, but laughed it off. Not me. I was hooked, drawn deeper into the mystery Baxter unveiled. Finally, one crisp morning, I decided to follow him fully. We ventured farther into the woods than ever, Baxter leading with purpose. The path narrowed, trees closing in, and the air grew thick, humming. Ahead, a clearing emerged, the same one with the stone marker. But now, in daylight, inscriptions glowed faintly. Baxter sat, staring at the center, where the ground shimmered like heat haze. My heart pounded. I approached, feeling a pull, a whisper in my mind. See. Kneeling, I touched the earth, and reality blinked. Colors inverted for a second, sounds reversed. Gasping, I pulled back, Baxter licking my hand, grounding me. What was this place? A thin spot in the veil? Back home, the journal revealed more. The previous owner had discovered it too, warned by their dog. It starts with stairs, it said. Then the glitches. Don't ignore. The words chilled me. I was on the precipice. Baxter my guide into the unknown. As night fell, he stared again, this time at me, eyes reflecting depths I feared to plumb. The tension coiled tighter, promising more revelations, or horrors. That moment in the clearing changed everything. I stumbled back to the cabin with Baxter trotting close, his warmth against my leg the only thing keeping me grounded. My hands were shaking as I locked the door behind us, and I sank onto the kitchen floor, pulling him into my lap like he was still a puppy. He licked my face once, then rested his head on my chest, breathing steady, as if to say, "I told you, now you see." And I did see, or at least I'd felt it. That brief flicker when I touched the ground, the way colors flipped and the world seemed to stutter. It wasn't imagination. It was real, and it terrified me more than any ghost story ever could. Because if reality could blink like that, what else was possible? What else was already slipping through? I barely slept that night. Every time I drifted off, I'd jerk awake, convinced the room had shifted while my eyes were closed. Baxter stayed on the bed with me, pressed against my side, his ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. At one point, around 3 in the morning, he lifted his head and stared at the bedroom door. Not growling this time, just watching, patient, waiting. I followed his gaze, heart thudding, and for a long minute nothing happened. Then the doorknob turned slowly, a fraction of an inch, before stopping. No one was on the other side. I knew that. The house was locked, alarms set, windows latched. But the knob had moved. I saw it. Baxter saw it. He didn't bark. He just lowered his head again, as if this was expected. I didn't sleep after that. The next few days blurred into a haze of hyper-awareness. I started mapping the strange moments, jotting them down in the margins of that old journal I'd found. The places Baxter stared longest, the times the air felt thickest, the exact seconds when something glitched. The kitchen clock skipping, the reflection in the bathroom mirror lagging half a beat behind my movements, the way my phone screen occasionally showed a notification that vanished when I tapped it, like a message from nowhere. Each entry made it feel more solid, less like I was losing my mind. Baxter became my compass. Wherever he looked, something was off, and the more I paid attention, the more I noticed the pattern. Everything centered around the woods, pulling toward that clearing like a slow tide. Sarah came over one afternoon, worried because I'd been dodging her texts. I let her in, made tea, tried to act normal, but Baxter gave me away. He paced between us, restless, then planted himself by the back door and stared out at the tree line. Sarah followed his gaze. "He's really on edge lately," she said softly. "You okay, Mia?" I almost told her everything, about the clearing, the journal, the flickering reality, but the word stuck. How do you explain something like that without sounding unhinged? Instead, I shrugged and said work had been stressful. She didn't push, but as she left, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Call me if you need anything, day or night." I nodded, throat tight, watching her car disappear into the fog. That night, the whispers came back. Not outside this time, inside. I was in the living room, reading by lamplight, when Baxter sat up abruptly and tilted his head. A moment later, I heard it, faint voices, overlapping, like a radio tuned between stations. They weren't words I could make out, just murmurs rising and falling, coming from everywhere and nowhere. I turned off the lamp, sat in darkness, straining to listen. The voices grew clearer for a second, almost like someone saying my name, then faded. Baxter whined, pressed against me, and I wrapped my arms around him. "What are they saying, boy?" I whispered. He didn't answer, of course, but his eyes were fixed on the hallway leading to the attic stairs. The hairs on my neck stood up. I didn't go check. I couldn't. By mid-November, the fog rarely lifted. Willow Creek felt wrapped in cotton. Sounds muffled, colors muted. I drove into town less and less, ordering groceries online, working from home in silence. Baxter and I stuck close. Our walks grew shorter, but he always tugged toward the same direction, deeper into the woods, toward the clearing. I resisted at first, scared of what might happen if I went back. But the pull grew stronger, mirroring his. One overcast afternoon I gave in. I packed a small backpack, water, flashlight, the journal, and we set out. Baxter led with purpose, tail low but steady, weaving through trails I'd never taken before. The forest felt different now, watchful. Branches seemed to lean in as we passed, leaves rustling without wind. We reached the clearing faster than I expected. The stone marker stood exactly as before, but the air here was heavier, charged, like the moments before lightning strikes. Baxter circled the center slowly, then sat and looked at me, waiting. I approached cautiously, heart pounding. The ground shimmered again, that heat haze effect stronger now. Kneeling, I hesitated, then placed my palm flat on the earth. The world stuttered, harder this time. Colors inverted, sounds warped into reverse echoes, and for a split second, I saw something else. Not our clearing, but the same space overlaid with another version. Trees taller, twisted differently, sky a bruised purple, and shapes moving between them, tall, thin, not quite human. Then it snapped back, leaving me gasping, head spinning. Baxter licked my wrist, grounding me. I pulled away, stumbling to my feet. "We have to go," I whispered, voice shaking. He didn't argue. He turned and led us home. That night, I dreamed of the clearing. But it wasn't a dream exactly. More like I was there, standing in that other version. The purple sky, the twisted trees. The shapes glided closer, silent, their outlines flickering like bad reception. I couldn't see faces, just impressions of eyes. Too many, too large. One reached toward me, and I felt that same cold breath on my neck from before. Baxter's bark yanked me awake, frantic, standing over me on the bed. I was soaked in sweat, sheets tangled. He wouldn't settle until I turned on every light in the house. We sat together on the couch till dawn, me stroking his fur, him watching the windows. The glitches spread beyond the woods after that. One morning, I poured coffee and watched the liquid swirl upward for a heartbeat before gravity corrected it. Another time, I walked into the kitchen and found Baxter's food bowl full when I just emptied it minutes before. I started taking photos, videos, proof, I told myself. But when I played them back, the anomalies were gone. Smooth, normal footage. Only Baxter and I knew the truth. He began sleeping with his head on my chest every night, as if guarding my heart from whatever was trying to get in. Thanksgiving came and went unnoticed. I didn't decorate, didn't cook. The town's holiday lights felt mocking through the fog. Sarah called, invited me over, but I made excuses. I couldn't face normalcy when my world was unraveling. Instead, I read the journal cover to cover. The previous owner, Eleanor Hayes, 1978, had written about the same things. Her dog Max staring at corners, glitches in mirrors, whispers in empty rooms. She'd found the clearing too, described the thin place where realities overlapped. Her last entries grew frantic. They're watching now. Max tries to keep them back, but I feel them closer every day. If you're reading this, leave before it's too late. The journal ended abruptly. No resolution. I closed it with trembling hands, wondering what had happened to her. December crept in, bringing early snow that muffled everything further. The forest looked enchanted from a distance, but up close, it felt predatory. Baxter's behavior shifted again. He no longer just stared. He started positioning himself between me and certain spots. The attic door, the back window, the hallway mirror. Protective. Warning. One evening, as snow fell thick outside, I caught him growling at my reflection. Not at me, at the mirror. I turned slowly, looked over my shoulder. My reflection smiled a second too late. Just a tiny delay, but enough. Ice flooded my veins. I covered the mirror with a sheet that night, then every mirror in the house. The whispers grew bolder. They followed me from room to room now, sometimes forming half words. Mia, or, see, always soft, patient. Baxter would whine and pace when they came, pressing close. I started talking back to him constantly, needing the sound of my own voice. We're okay, buddy. We're still here. But I wasn't sure anymore. Some mornings I'd wake to find objects move, my keys on the wrong hook, a chair pulled out, the journal open to a different page. Always subtle, always deniable, except Baxter saw it too. Then came the night everything tilted further. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., snow piling against the windows. Baxter woke me with urgent whines, pawing at the bed. I followed him downstairs, half asleep, to the back door. He didn't want out. He wanted me to look. Through the glass, in the yard's faint moonlight, footprints led from the woods straight to the porch. Human-sized, but wrong. Too long, too narrow, spaced oddly as if the stride was off. They stopped right at the door. No prints leading away. Baxter growled low, fur bristling. I backed away, heart slamming, and didn't open the door. We retreated upstairs, barricaded the bedroom, lights blazing. I held him tight until morning, both of us trembling. The next day, I tried to leave, packed a bag, loaded Baxter in the car, determined to drive to Sarah's or a hotel, anywhere but here. But when I turned the key, the engine wouldn't start. Battery fine, gas full, nothing wrong mechanically. It just refused. I tried 3 times, then sat there crying, forehead against the steering wheel. Baxter whined from the passenger seat, licked my cheek. Trapped. That's when I understood. Whatever this was, it wasn't letting me go easily. As Christmas approached, the veil thinned further. I could feel it in the air, a constant pressure behind my eyes. Baxter barely ate anymore, just stayed vigilant. The whispers became conversations I almost understood, layered voices discussing me like I was a specimen. One afternoon, while snow swirled outside, I sat in the clearing again, drawn there despite every instinct screaming no. The shimmer was constant now, a visible ripple. Touching it brought longer glimpses, the other side clearer, those shapes more defined. They noticed me watching. One turned fully, and I felt recognition, like it knew my name before I did. That night, back in the cabin, Baxter did something new. He led me to the attic door, pawed once, then looked at me with those deep, knowing eyes. I hadn't been up there since finding the journal. Hands shaking, I opened the door. Dust and cold air greeted me. Climbing the stairs with a flashlight, Baxter close behind, I found fresh scratches on the wooden floor, long, deliberate marks forming a rough circle. In the center, a single word gouged deep. Soon. I don't know how long I stared at it. Baxter pressed against my legs, whining softly. Whatever was coming, it was almost here. And Baxter, he knew exactly what it was. The attic discovery shattered whatever fragile denial I had left. That single word, soon etched into the wood like a promise, sent me reeling down the stairs, Baxter at my heels, his whines a soundtrack to my panic. I slammed the door shut, leaned against it, breathing hard. My mind raced. Who, or what, had done that? Eleanor's journal mentioned nothing about scratches, but her warnings echoed louder now. They're closer every day. I glanced at Baxter, his eyes meeting mine with that uncanny understanding. He knew. He'd always known. And now, with winter's grip tightening on Willow Creek, I felt the inevitability settling over us like fresh snow. I didn't leave the house for days after that. The snowstorms rolled in, blanketing the world in white silence. But inside the cabin, the air hummed with anticipation. Baxter rarely left my side, his body a constant barrier between me and the doors, the windows, the mirrors I'd already shrouded. The whispers evolved too, no longer vague murmurs, but fragments of sentences, like eavesdropping on a conversation in the next room. Coming through, or, the veil weakens. They came at odd hours, pulling me from sleep or interrupting my attempts to work. I'd freeze, listening, and Baxter would tilt his head, ears perked, confirming I wasn't imagining it. One afternoon, as flurries danced outside, the voices synced for a moment. Mia, C.U.S., my name, clear as a bell. I dropped my mug, hot tea spilling across the floor. Baxter lapped it up absent-mindedly, but his gaze fixed on the ceiling, where the shadows seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. I buried myself in research, or what passed for it in my isolated state. The journal became my Bible, Eleanor's words a map to this madness. She'd theorized the clearing was a nexus, a spot where our reality brushed against another, parallel, perhaps, or something older, hungrier. Her dog Max had been the first to sense the bleed through, the way Baxter did now. She tried rituals from old folklore books, salt circles, iron wards, chants under the moon. None worked long term. Her last entry. Max growls at the walls. I feel them watching from inside now. If I don't close it, it trailed off. What had she tried? What happened to her? I searched the cabin for more clues. Baxter trailing me like a shadow. In the basement, amid cobwebs and forgotten boxes, I found a small iron key tucked in a drawer. It fit nothing obvious. No locks, no doors. But holding it brought a faint warmth, a counter to the growing chill. As the days shortened, the glitches intensified, weaving into daily life like threads in a fraying tapestry. Lights would dim without reason, then flare bright, casting elongated shadows that didn't match the objects around them. Objects shifted positions overnight. My favorite photo of Baxter as a pup moved from the mantel to the kitchen table. Books rearranged on shelves into patterns that looked almost like symbols. I'd wake to find paw prints, not Baxter's, tracked across the snowy porch, circling the house before vanishing into thin air. He'd sniff them warily, hackles up, but never follow. The car still wouldn't start, no matter how I tinkered under the hood. I called a mechanic from town, but the line crackled with static, voices murmuring underneath our conversation. He promised to come, but never showed. The isolation deepened, a cocoon of dread. Christmas Eve arrived under a steel-gray sky, the town's distant lights twinkling like mocking stars through the fog. I tried to create some normalcy, lit candles, played soft music on my phone, but Baxter paced restlessly, ignoring the treats I offered. The whispers were constant now, a background hum that made my skin itch. Around midnight, as I sat by the fire, he suddenly bolted to the back door, scratching insistently. My stomach nodded. I knew better than to ignore him. Peering through the frosted glass, I saw fresh footprints in the snow, those elongated ones, leading straight to the threshold again. But this time, they didn't stop. A soft thump against the door, like a hand testing the wood. Baxter's growl rumbled deep, protective. I backed away, grabbing the iron key from my pocket, clutching it like a talisman. The thump came again, then silence. When I mustered the courage to look minutes later, the prints were gone, erased as if never there. That night, sleep evaded me entirely. I lay in bed, Baxter curled at my feet, listening to the house creak in ways it never had before. Around dawn, a new sound, scratching, faint but persistent, coming from the walls. Not mice. This was deliberate, rhythmic, like nails carving messages. Baxter sat up, ears forward, then nudged me gently, as if urging me to move. I followed him downstairs, where the scratching localized to the living room wall, behind the bookshelf. Heart pounding, I pulled books away, revealing bare plaster. The sound stopped abruptly, but there, faint under layers of paint, were outlines, words, symbols, emerging like developing film. Welcome, one read. Another, join. My breath fogged the air, unnaturally cold. Baxter whined, pawing the floor. I covered it with a blanket, but the damage was done. The invasion had begun inside. New Year's approached, but celebrations felt worlds away. The snow piled higher, burying the paths, and the forest loomed closer, branches tapping windows like insistent fingers. Baxter's vigilance never waned. He'd position himself at thresholds, staring into spaces where the air shimmered faintly. I started seeing the shapes too, not fully, but glimpses in peripheral vision, tall forms slipping behind trees outside, or reflections in uncovered glass that didn't belong. The iron key became my constant companion. Holding it seemed to dull the whispers, ground me when the world stuttered. One stormy afternoon, desperate for answers, I braved the woods again, Baxter leading through knee-deep drifts to the clearing. The stone marker was half buried now, but the shimmer roared like a portal, visible even without touch. I knelt, key in hand, and pressed it to the ground. A jolt ran through me, electric, clarifying. The other side flashed vivid, those shapes clearer, beckoning, their forms fluid like smoke given intent. They whispered directly now, "Cross over, see truly." Baxter pulled me back, teeth gentle on my sleeve, snapping the connection. We fled home, but the pull lingered, a siren call in my veins. The climax built subtly, night by night. Objects didn't just move, they duplicated sometimes. Two identical mugs on the counter, extra shadows in corners. The phone rang with no caller, voices murmuring my name before disconnecting. Baxter grew thinner, his eyes hollow but fierce. He'd nuzzle me often, as if reassuring, or farewell. One evening, as twilight bled into dark, he led me to the attic again. The circle of scratches had expanded, the word "soon" now part of a larger phrase. "Soon you will know." I sat there, journal open, piecing Eleanor's fragments. She'd mentioned a closing rite, using iron and will to seal the veil, but it required facing the nexus at its peak. The full moon was coming, the thinnest night. January's full moon rose bloated and red, casting the snow in bloody hues. The whispers crescendoed into a chorus, pulling at my mind. Baxter whined constantly, pacing. Around midnight the house shook gently, like an earthquake's precursor. Lights flickered, walls breathed. He bolted downstairs, barking for the first time in days, urgent, commanding. I followed, iron key gripped tight. The back door stood ajar, snow drifting in. Outside, the footprints multiplied, a path leading to the woods. The clearing called. Baxter looked back at me, eyes pleading, now or never. We went. The forest was alive, branches parting like welcoming arms. The path clear despite the snow. Whispers guided us, promising knowledge, belonging. The clearing pulsed with light, not moonlight, but something internal. The shimmer a roaring vortex now. Shapes gathered on the other side, waiting. Baxter positioned himself between me and the center, growling low. I knelt, key in hand, reciting words from the journal. Half-remembered chants of binding were poured into iron. The ground bucked, colors inverted. The shapes lunged, tendrils reaching through the veil, cold fingers brushing my skin. Pain lanced through me, visions flooding, other worlds, endless realities overlapping, entities hungry for entry. Baxter leaped forward, a blur of fur and fury, snapping at the air. A yelp, his pained. The veil tore wider for a heartbeat, then the key heated in my palm, glowing. I slammed it down, screaming the final words. A shockwave rippled out. The shapes recoiled, whispers turning to shrieks. Reality snapped back, hard. Silence fell, profound. I collapsed, Baxter limped beside me. Panic surged. I scooped him up, his breathing shallow, fur singed where he touched the vortex. Back to the cabin. I wrapped him in blankets by the fire, tears streaming. "Hold on, boy, please." Hours blurred. I tended him, whispering thanks, apologies. By dawn, he stirred, licked my hand weakly. The whispers were gone. Glitches ceased. The world felt solid again. Days later, life crept toward normal. The car started. Snow melted. Sarah visited relieved. But Baxter, he changed. His stare stopped, but his eyes held depths now, like he'd seen too much. We walked the woods still, but avoid the clearing. The marker cracked, shimmer faint. Sometimes, at night, I feel a brush of cold, hear a distant murmur. Is it sealed? Or just waiting? Baxter sleeps closer now, my guardian. Reality holds, for now. But I watch him, knowing if it frays again, he'll know first.